but we'll figure it all out and try to get it all together. Rabbi Smith.
Have always new shilas, always new situations, and the Torah is always a Torah Shlema, very responsive. We have in recent years the question of using post-its, flags. I don't mean a flag in Simchas Torah, I mean the flags that you have in Svarim. You keep a flag on place. Can you use that on Shabbos or Yom Tiv? Velcro and magnets and safety pins. And if we have time, a little bit about stitches. In other words, in the Melacha, one of the Melachas in the Mishkan was the Melacha of Tofer, of sewing. And the question is, does the Melacha of Tofer apply to a connection through Velcro, through safety pins? Someone had a shaila, the hem of his pants fell down. So he wanted to use a safety pin to basically connect it. Is that considered Tofer? Again, sticking on a post-it or a flag, is that Tofer? So basically, the question is, what shaykhs does sticking have to do with Tofer? We seem to remember Tofer means sewing. In the Mishkan, there were two pshatim in what they did, but either they sewed the different materials together, they connected it by sewing, or they repaired a hole by sewing it. But Tofer means sewing. Why should I think that this has a shaykhs to gluing, or using diapers, or band-aids, etc., etc.? So I'll give you a good example of Tofer that could be an ageya, and this the Mishnah Berurah already, the Shulchan Aruch points this out. If someone has a loose button, the threads are loose, and he pulls the thread and tightens the button, that might be Tofer. He's strengthening a sewn-on button. But the question is, what shaykh does this have to our sugya? Why should a post-it or a flag on a paper have a shaykh to Tofer? The emphasis is the other half of Tofer is kareya. Before you sew something, to repair it, you have to tear it a little bit, and then you could repair it. And again, Mr. Berurah says, if you have a loose thread and you pull it out, that's kareya. All this is fine. What shaykh does this have to our sugya for tonight? So the emphasis is the conventional Tofer is sewing with a needle and thread, or tightening a sewn button. But the Rambam greatly expands the Melacha of Tofer, and that really gives us a delightful share for tonight. Zok the Rambam, "Mamedabek nayarais oy orais b'koilan shel seifrim." If you take a very strong glue, glue is not a new creation or new invention. They had glue in the olden days as well. Koilan shel seifrim means a binder's glue, a very strong glue. If you connect two papers with glue, Zok the Ram Hareze Toldais Tofer v'chayev. That's the Melacha of Tofer. Therefore, Zok the Rambam, if two glued papers is Tofer, logic dictates to tear apart the two pages is Kareya. Because that's the Metzias. There's building, Baina, and Saisa. There's the other Melachis, and that are really basically a set one of the other. And here we have Kareya is the opposite of Tofer. Okay? So this is the aside of the Rambam, and this is Gepaskin and Shulchan Aruch. And the Hezbollah is Tofer means connecting. Why should it only be connecting by sewing? If you connect with a stronger medium, dahainu, with glue, that's also connecting. And that's the Yeshita of the Makebas HaMishnah and the Aruch HaShulchan both say, that's the Pshat in the Rambam. Gluing something is a stronger form of dibuk, even more than sewing. And to give you just one example for now, if a person would close an envelope and the old-fashioned lick it, wet it, and close the envelope, that would be Tofer. You are connecting the envelope, the two parts, with stick. Okay. Now the big question is, what about everything in between? Is a post-it considered Tofer? Velcro? A staple? I brought my student to the cleaners. He put a label on. He stapled it. Can I tear that off? Is that Kareya? So I really think the one Yisai will give us enough guidance. What exactly is the Melacha of Tofer? If you learn Tofer means sewing, then nothing else is included. But we just saw gluing is also awesome. Why taka is gluing included in the malach of Tofer? Is the issa connecting? And if it's connected, then it's awesome. Or is the issa actually joining two things together? And let me explain what I mean a little better off. The buttons also close things. A zipper closes something. If you attach a lining into a coat, would you call that Tofer? Doesn't sound right, but it's connected. If you attach a lining with buttons, would you call that Tofer? So the truth is, doesn't sound right, but why not? So let me tell you a beautiful yesod that will give us a tremendous insight into this sugya. The Ginas V'Radim, who's a Svardish Gadol in Gimel Yud Zayin, says, I don't understand. He says, people take a pin, a needle, a sewing needle, and they make a hem on Shabbos with a pin. I don't understand why is there no issa of Tofer. You're connecting the hem to the pants, or whatever it is. Let's say you want to connect something to something else, you use a pin, you're connecting with a pin. That's awesome, that's Tofer. He says, the fact is that you're taking two parts of a garment and you're connecting it. Zakti Ginas V'Radim, using a pin to connect the hem is the malach of Tofer. And he proves it. We find regarding shatnez is tzemer upishtim. If you take a tzemer and a pishtim beged and you connect it with the pin, it's considered shatnez. So the same should apply with Shabbos. So this is an incredible insight into the sugya of Tofer. Tofer is not only sewing, Tofer is not only gluing, connecting with the pin is also Tofer. And he's not the only one that says this. The Karban Asana, one of the Ashkenaz, the Gedolim, he says, I don't understand. People use a shtek noddle. I guess that's a stick pin. Safety? No, it's not a safety pin. You'll soon see. Safety pin is a pretty new innovation. This is a pin, a shtek noddle. I guess you stick someone with it, but the shtek noddle, I don't understand. He says, why do people use a shtek noddle on Shabbos? That's Tofer. Now, the truth is, a safety pin, we'll soon see, is the same idea, but it has a safety feature to it. But basically, this Karban Asana is quoted by the Reb Kiva Eger and the Mishnah Berurah. So here we see a third expression of Tofer. The conventional old-fashioned sewing, there is gluing, and now we have, say, pinning a hem to the pants, or certainly a safety pin. Now, had this been the final word, we would be pretty much in trouble, because now we see a very expanded form of Tofer. But it's not the final word. Rav Moshe Chelik Bey, Simon Pei Daled, this tshuva was dated Tufshin Yud Tes 1959 for a good reason. 1959, there were no disposable diapers, if you remember or not, but the Metzias is what they had, the cloth diapers with no sticky tab. You had a safety pin and you closed the diaper. Someone asked Rav Moshe, can you use a safety pin on Shabbos to close a diaper? Safety pin connects the two edges of the diaper, a very efficient, very long-lasting connection. So Rav Moshe says, a safety pin is not Tofer. A safety pin is like prifa. Prifa is Lashon Kodesh for buttoning. And Rav Moshe in his Geonis brings two Gemaras in Shabbos Samachei and Kuf Yud Aleph that buttoning something is not Tofer. In other words, Tofer is not merely connecting something. When you button a lining to a coat, you're also connecting it. But it's not inherently merged. It's not inherently connected. So up to Rav Moshe, prifa buttoning is mutter. And if you think about it, the safety pin connection does not do much more than buttoning. Zok Rav Moshe, a tremendous yesod. And that's going to impact Post-its and Velcro and many other items. Zok Rav Moshe, the issa of Tofer is when you glue something, it becomes one. And the biggest raya is you can't just open it, you have to tear it open. When you sew something, it's closed. You can't just press a button and it opens, you have to tear it apart. When something needs tearing, kaireya, then that's tofer. Sewing, if you sew things there, you have to tear it apart. Gluing is even more obviously a form of connection. But Zok Rav Moshe, when you have a safety pin, you open it up and you take it off, and the diaper is the same. Zok Rav Moshe, that is not the malacha of tofer. Something that peels clean or comes off clean is not tofer. And he proves it kedarka with another raya. The Rambam says hapoisel psilos. Now, if you want to know what that means, he twines string. Now, we don't use twine string so much, but this tzitzis that I have, or your tzitzis, or all tzitzis, are 8 strings all in one. This is called the kafel shmeina. But if to make 8 into 1, that's called poisel psilos. You twine the string. So up to Rambam, that's the malacha of kosher. Frank Moshe, wait a second. Why kosher? Why not say tofer? You're taking 8 and turning it into 1. Why isn't that tofer? The teretz is that this you don't have to tear apart. You untwine it, you unravel it, and it's back to 8 strings. So Rav Moshe, the Yesod Hadava is when something is connected and you have to tear it, that's tofer. When something just opens apart, that is not the malacha of tofer. Therefore, says Rav Moshe, when you use a safety pin, it's not really one. If it's not really one, you have no problem with the malacha of tofer. What?
He was arguing on a straight pins.
He's arguing on both.
I'm saying the ones before said about a straight pin.
Yeah,
He's arguing
of course. Zok Rav Moshe, that's why I can't accept the carbon asano. The carbon asano's premise is that a straight pin or a safety pin is tofer because it connects. That's true. It does connect. But connecting is no different than buttoning. And the proof is try to take it apart. With a pin.
But if the tzitzis are kosher, why isn't buttoning kosher?
That is an excellent question. And that's what the Aruch HaShulchan asks. He has a question. Why is the difference kosher versus tofer? Okay? And the Aruch HaShulchan says tofer you have to tear it apart. Kosher you have to untie it. But there has to be a knot to make it kosher. Poisel psilos, the Rambam considers a knot because it becomes one. But a safety pin, you don't have to do anything of significance. Now, the truth is, Rav Shimon's kasha is a good kasha, because not everybody holds that poisel psilos is kosher because it's not really knotted. But in the best scenario, 8 strings into 1 is kosher. But a safety pin, you have to just open it up. So basically, according to this premise of Rav Moshe, we'll soon use this. This makes life much easier. Because l'mashal, a Band-Aid, and you want to take off the plastic tab of a Band-Aid, that would not be kareya. Because it peels clean. You don't tear it apart. But this is Rav Moshe's yesod regarding safety pins, and we see from this, at least according to Rav Moshe, when something opens easily without tearing it, that's not tofer, and it's not kareya. Okay? Now let's apply this lemaisa, and I hope this should be simple. But let's start with an interesting question, okay? You're a concerned citizen, you come to Shul Shabbos, sit down on a chair, there's a nail sticking out. It almost tore your suit. But, you're not thinking of yourself, you want to go home, but the next guy. So you want to take a piece of tape and put it on top of the nail and put it on till after Shabbos. After Shabbos, you come with your hammer and you'll bang in the nail. Can I put a piece of tape on top of a chair, a wooden chair, to block the nail?
Tape means sticking it on?
Yeah, sticking on tape to a chair. Would that be a problem of tofer? What? Problem. Okay, that's a fusion. That's not just safety pinning it. I'm connecting it. Zok the minchas chinuch in Kareya Oishei, a tremendous chiddush, but it's very negeya. Tofer is only by soft materials, by cloth, by leather, something that's pliable. But zok the minchas chinuch, a hard material, there's no tofer. You can't be tofer a piece of wood, the Minchas Chinuch.
Why is the words in the Band-Aid?
It feels clean.
With Band-Aid, we're going to see that's
Why
the...
are the words in the Band-Aid?
It's not worse. We're going to soon see that's the heter putting a Band-Aid on your finger because your finger is hard. Exactly. I'm going to use all this information. So this is the Minchas Chinuch big yisoid that when madbik nayarais, what's nayarais? Paper. Oirais, material. Where do we have on a table? There's the issa of Tofer. So therefore he says, even if only one, the poskim add, even if only one side is hard, it's not really bonding, it's not merging. You're putting a piece of tape on a table. Now the truth is Rav Moshe would have a different heter, because the tape that you put on the chair, it peels clean. When you put a piece of tape on a sign on the wall, you tear off the tape, you tear off the sign. So this is the Minchas Chinuch's big yisoid. We'll soon use that. But I must say, I can't say all agree, because the Bi'alacha by us and Shin Mem, Sif Yudal, it says, if you take two pieces of wood together and you connect two pieces of wood, that's Tofer. Obviously, that may be Osvar, but this is what he says, so we could say we have a second possible heter. The first heter is what peels clean like Rav Moshe's mutter. I can't say all agree, because the Keramasanal asers. And the second possible heter is when something is a hard material. But last but not least, as far as our terim, and then we'll apply it with all the shilas, is the following. Let's say someone sewed something Erev Shabbos, al das to open it on Shabbos. He sewed it up for 6 hours, and I'll give you an example. He has two boys that need a suit. So Friday night, he hemmed up the pants. The short boy is going to wear it. Shabbos morning, the big boy will tear up the hem, wear it. He sewed it up for a few hours, Friday afternoon, al das to open it on Shabbos. Are you allowed to do that? Are you allowed to tear a connection that was done Erev Shabbos for a few hours? Wait. Where do we find the heter of temporary? By kesher, exactly. What?
The definition of kayoma means it's going to last.
Okay, and how about Tofer? Okay, good. I think you're saying an Abinez. Yeah, okay, but maybe since you did it for a temporary purpose, doesn't mean have a Shem Tofer. So let me tell you, what you said was you both said very good. But basically the point here is that when it comes to Kesha, we definitely find less than 24 hours is not an Issa. And this is why we find that in Shin Yud Zayin Gimel, you're allowed to open a Keshen Shel Kiyama on Shabbos.
But if I don't do anything to it, it'll last.
It's true, right? But then again, shoes, not on shoes also, if it will last. But here's the Chiddush. If you look in Shulchan Aruch, you will see that there are 2 days in Shulchan Aruch regarding a Toifa if there's a heter Eina Shel Kayama. And the Rivah, the Beis Yosef brings the Rivah, that we only find Eina Kayama regarding Kesher, but not regarding Toifa. That means you sewed up the hem for 6 hours, it's also to open it. Frag the Avnei Nezer, what's the chiluk? Maybe that's what you meant to say. Kesher and Toif, what's the chiluk? Says the Avnei Nezer in the Chuvas, a Go'ina Shavar. This is typical Avnei Nezer. When you knot a pair of shoes, you didn't do anything. You took 2 strings and you made a knot. There is no real connection. The whole connection is the knot. So if the knot is almanas to open, you did nothing. When you sewed a hem, you connected permanently and intrinsically the hem to the pants. Then you want to open it. So you did a malacha gemura, al das to open it. Who said that's mutter? Mama said it's your taina. Tying 2 strings into a bow knot is not really a connection. The connection is you want to keep it. So if you're not keeping it, there's no issa. But a tfira is us. But the Shulchan Aruch there says v'yesh matirim. Some do allow opening a tfira she'ena shel kayama. And if I would stop and say, so how do we paskin? Shulchan Aruch says asa v'yesh matirim. So the derech in Shulchan Aruch is you go with the first shita, but there are more adds ve'ein lahate b'fnei amaretz. Don't say this heter in front of an amaretz. I'm very proud to say this heter to all of you because not one amaretz in this base medrash. But what?
make the hem of the pants loose.
If it's not a tefira, then you're right. But I'm saying more than you're saying. He's saying good. If you don't make a tefira, you're right. It's mutter. But I'm saying more. The Ramah seems to say the yesh matirim and don't tell an amoritz, but a talmid chacham ilaru. So the Paiskim seem to say that this last edition of the Ramah indicates that he's really being makel. Maybe the heta is like you said, you're not keeping it. So Rabbi said, I want to just chazer over that. I want to apply this to hopefully to many shaylas. But basically, what we learned here is that there's a malacha of tofer of sewing. The Rambam says even more than that, that not just sewing is asa, but gluing is asa. Then we saw some possible heterim. Number one, we saw the heta when a pin that doesn't really connect, a safety pin, where Moshe is makel, okay, Kamasanos Machme, but Moshe was makel. Then we saw another heta that if you connect a hard item, you glue onto a table or into a finger, there are some makilim. But this third heta, a tefira she'ena shel kayama, is machlokes rishonim, and the Ramah seems to be makel, make it a din. Now, when we're going to go through,
How do you define Eina Shel Kayom?
within 24 hours, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. I'll give you an example. Okay.
Kesh Kayom. If I want to take a real Kesh Kayom.
No.
I want to take it apart.
No. Pasha. In Hilchos Kesher, there are two criteria. One is how long you're keeping it, and one is the quality of the knot. If you make a Kesher Gama, even Miyad is us. We are making a bow knot. So he's right. That's why the Machab is not makel. You're right. That's why the Machab is not makel. You're right. He's right. Because even kesher, we're not makel by a kesher gum. We're makel by a quasi kesher, by a bow knot. But that's probably why the Machab is machmir. The Ramah is a matirin, and don't tell other people. But again, it could be that the same svar applies. If you're doing it to open it, it doesn't have a shem tefir. But now I think once you get the basic premise of it, I think it should be simple. Let's go a little more specifically. Opening an envelope that was sealed before Shabbos is the malacha of kareya. Sealing an envelope, whether you lick it or it has self-adhesive glue, is asa. Why? This all agree. Because here you can't peel it clean. Here you tear it open. So even Rav Moshe would say this would be a case of madbik niyaris. I once had this shayla. It wasn't a super big nafkamina, but someone said he had a stamp that fell off the backing of the stamps, and if you leave it till after Shabbos, it'll dry up. So he wanted to just put it onto an envelope. So first of all, a stamp is probably muktzah, but besides that, you're sticking a stamp onto an envelope. Think what you're doing. This is a bona fide Tofer. This is not Tofer mamish. This is madbik nayaris. And when the stamp is on, it doesn't just peel clean. Okay. I'll tell you a hospital child, the Nishmas Avram, that's Dr. Sofer Avram Sofer in Eretz. He has a whole sefer for doctors. And for a doctor, this is a weekly, a Midah Shabbos b'Shabbat. Doctors have to take specimens from patients, whatever it is, and they have to label everything. So the question is, can you put a label onto a specimen, onto the vial, the blood, whatever, urine specimen? So can you take a pre-made label that has his name and his whatever the ID? Oh, so that's good. So this would be, according to the Minchas Chinuch, it's mutter because it's hard. According to Rav Moshe, if it peels clean, it's also mutter. But the problem is this would be more than 24 hours. So certainly it would be an eitzah, if possible, just to use a rubber band, which some doctors do on Shabbat, use a rubber band to connect it. But here we have two possible heterim. But one thing he says also, for doctors, a doctor has a patient, typically he has to have different papers or files or records. So they typically, when they admit a patient, they get all his info, and they print out a 24 labels that they use whenever they need it. So he says it's a great idea to print out before Shabbos, but what are you going to do with those labels on Shabbos? You're going to put it onto this chart and that chart and this chart. That's really toifa. He's sticking a gluey substance, and this is not a hard substance. You're putting it onto a paper, onto a chart. Now you put it onto a bed. No? Okay. But this, he says, it's kedai to use, instead of using the glue part, a paper clip or something that connects without a real connection. So basically, it's the same yesod. If you have to put the label onto a bed, then you have a heter at least of the minchas chinuch. But putting it onto paper is a problem. Now today could be this shaila is obsolete, but they used to have the picture album with adhesive backing. You put the picture on and the picture stayed. Today pictures are all in the phones and cameras. You don't even see the pictures anymore. But anyhow, when you put pictures onto an adhesive album, that's mamish, the real McCoy Issa of Tofer. Now, we had one to Shaila, a very interesting Shaila. Someone had, I think all the shuls have this, you have binding tape that the binder used, and the tape fell off. So you want to re-stick the binding tape onto the Gemara, or onto the Sefer, whatever it is. So this is more of an issue, because this you're putting on tape to stay. And the truth is, even a Minchas Chinuch's heter will not apply, because the cardboard cover of a Sefer is not the hard piece of wood. That is more like leather, which is pliable, so that avada should not be done. I saw I'm not even familiar with the Metzias, but the Avnei Yoshvei has a shaila where women, they stick artificial nails to their fingers. I'm not sure the Metzias, but that, he says, is a real connection. You're connecting something with the permanence, you want it to stay, that would be a malacha of Tofer. I'll tell you another beautiful shaila for people that are visiting family. Your wife had a baby, you want to visit the wife and child in the hospital. So they used to have a bracelet that they stuck on the two sides, and it was tamper-proof, so you couldn't take it off. So that was a problem. I mean, if it's from a hospital and from a doctor, sticking on that, connecting that ID bracelet is mamish the malach of Tofer. You're sticking two soft parts to stay. It doesn't peel clean. The tamper-proof feature makes you can't peel it clean. What? I understand, but the gluey part stays. So that's why Lamaisa, that was a problem. And Taka, I don't know what they do in the local hospital in Eretz Yisrael, where there are some firma hospitals that follow halacha. That's why they instituted the interlocking ID bracelet. Now, if you ever been in a hospital recently, you have a same plastic white thing, but you push the one side into the other side, and it works with an interlocking, a little piece of plastic in the center, and once you push it in, you can't open it. It's not like a belt you open and close, but it's a pretty simple technique, but once you stick it in, the two things in, the two tongues interlock, and you can't open it. You only have to tear it open. I don't know, it's baina. Ask the better question. Isn't that Tofer? Why isn't that Tofer?
Not using a medium to
Excellent. Rav, this would be no different than the safety pin, where it's not really connecting two things. It's a chachma. What you said, the better would be Tofer. When you stick this in, you didn't really connect anything inherently. It's like you put a belt in and you wrapped it around 4 times. So a Moshe that was matter with a safety pin, certainly, I guess say certainly, but would also be matter with this interlocking ID bracelet. The carbonisano that holds even a safety pin is a problem. Then this interlocking bracelet would also be a problem, but I certainly think it's better than the gluey one that mamish makes a real connection.
Why should I say the pin is easily separated, right? Here it takes a malacha to separate.
What's the difference? Not a malacha. You have to break it. So therefore what? Where's the Tofer? How's the gluing? Ramesh says when it comes to gluing, right? That you have to tear it. That indicates that's the malach of Tofer. Where's the tefira here?
Because you have to break something to separate it.
I understand, but there's no Tofer. When you take the pin,
You're not breaking the bond.
Right, when you take the pin, you put it this way and that simulates tefira, and it holds. So therefore, it's awesome. But where's the tefira? If you stick it once, it's only sticking it once through. You know that. I once studied it, but I forgot how it works already. Anybody know how?
Because you have to break it, doesn't make the initial.
Right. Anybody knows how it works? I once studied one of these things. I just forgot how it works. What? The interlocking.
There's a cable tie.
Yeah, okay, that's right. A cable tie.
Those are ones you can never pull it.
How does it work? There's one piece of plastic.
The teeth will go
The
one way.
teeth are
Once
one.
Okay, there you go. Why is that Tofer? how does that simulate at all tefirah? Tefirah is either sewing, that's inherently connecting, or gluing, which connects. But this, you have to break it to get it out, but that's not really tefirah. That's not tefirah, not even the auxiliary tefirah of gluing. Okay.
Why is that going on something hard?
It's using...
It's going on something hard, and it's easily...
I don't know if nails are considered hard in this respect. Nails are right? It doesn't. Obviously, doesn't come off easily. Okay, I'm really not familiar. I said I'm not familiar, but now another question we had. This comes up quite often, especially in Moisdis, where they don't necessarily nail in mezuzahs to the wall because they have metal walls and metal beams. So they have two-sided tape, which is basically tape on this side, tape on the other side, and you put the mezuzah on this double-sided tape, and then you attach the tape to the wall. And Shabbos, the mezuzah with the double-sided tape fell on the floor. So the whole child is it muktzah, whatever, but a mezuzah shouldn't be muktzah. Can I pick up the mezuzah and reattach it? Easy come, easy go, easy come. It fell off, I put it back. So this, l'chayra, is tefirah. You're taking with glue and adding to the wall. But then again, you have the minchas chinuch sisayit. You're putting it to a wall. It's not tefirah. It's one side glue and one side a wall.
It's worse because even a window shade is even without attaching. It's moist smell a bit.
Oh, that's what he said earlier, and I was going to get back to that. When you buying is a different thing. Taka the Paiskim say that attaching the mezuzah might be moist alabinyan. That's true, but not tofer. That they all say that. Hakim Zalman says a chiddush, but if you know a little bit about Meleches, it's a chiddush. Let's say the mezuzah case remained on the wall. The mezuzah slipped out. Let's say you have one of these fancy ones. I don't know what, but the kid said the mezuzah slipped out and the case is on the wall. Can I just slip the mezuzah back into the case that's on the wall? So that, he says, is a moisav al binyan. Some poskim say, because like you said, a window shade, I'm not banging and I'm not making construction, but a permanent connection to a binyan has the status of binyan. But no one really pinpoints the malach of tefirah. I can understand why. Like Rav Moshe is not a problem because the tape comes off, and the other sheet is that it's hard. Now, then again, if you want to put together the other sheet is and be machmir al taif for sure. But one thing we could say that the mere fact that the poskim are more concerned about moisav al binyan, and especially the tape is shvach, it's not going to stay too long. So the real problem would be the binyan and not so much the sticky part. I saw the poskim say the fact that you make the bracha likfoya mezuzah. That shows that the mezuzah is connected to the wall, and therefore putting on the mezuzah to the wall would be a moisav al binyan. Okay. Today we have everything fancy, but I still remember the time that people put a piece of tape onto the light switch in the bathroom or in the dining room. They don't want to close the light by mistake. If a person cut tape before Shabbos but forgot to put the tape onto the light switch, could he put on tape to the light switch on Shabbos? So again, this is the minchas chinuch that he's putting onto a firm backing is not a problem. Rav Moshe's head to also probably would apply, but if you go with the machmirim, you're taping something onto a wall. But again, the paiskim, I saw the tshuva, the Vayan Yosef and Aleph Kuf Mem, he's concerned about moisav al binyan, because when a piece of tape you put on the wall, it stays. Now the fact you take it off after 25 hours doesn't take away from the 24 hours shaboy. So the fact that he's more concerned about moisav al binyan, maybe Taka he considered the heta that it's hard and the heta that it's peeling clean. Now today people ask, they have these fancier magnetic things you put on the light. L'chayr, that's not really moisav al binyan because the magnetic connection does not have any real permanence to it. I mean, really, you put something on the refrigerator, you take it off, you put it on. So a piece of tape stays. The magnetic thing you take off, it falls off, you put it on. So that certainly wouldn't be taifa. A magnetic connection is not really taifa, that's certainly. What?
Clip on top of the light.
Oh, that's a problem. The magnetic connection is not a connection. That's a real moisal opinion. I know what you meant. I know what you mean. That connect in. I was just in a hotel the other week, and they have these. What's that? Why not? A lot of shoes, they just they disattach one side and let the other side hanging. Now, I was just recently again in a hotel, and they had magnetic doors, with the electronic cards, but they had a little strip of a magnet. You put it on the side of the lock, and then you could deactivate it. Everything, you could use that on Shabbos. So a lot of people, they said if you really want at night, you could take off that piece. The door locks automatically. Can you take off and put back that magnetic strip onto the door locking part? So it's the same thing. It's not moist al opinion. You're putting on and off. It doesn't really connect in any way. It's just a very weak connection of a magnet. That should be okay. Now, this is a real quote, real yeshiva shashayla, but someone has a refrigerator that's seen better days, so he uses a piece of tape to keep the door closed. So that someone asked me. So Lamaisa, that we have the fact that it peels clean, and you're doing it quite often, unless you're starving on Shabbos. So it's Einish al Kayama, it peels clean, and also the tape is going on to a hard surface, so you probably have all the heter. Now, let me share with you an interesting shaila. It was the end of a winter, and a lot of people winterize their homes, and they have tape on the window, all the cracks and crevices, and all of a sudden it got very warm, and he wants to open the window. Can you peel off all the tape that you put onto the window? So here, again, the tape on the window, you have the heta of the minchas chinuch. But very often you put tape on other tape, and then you have none of that tape, because tape on tape often does not peel clean. So if you have that type of tape, the cheaper tape, it just tears apart but doesn't really peel clean. So tape on tape is a problem. Tape on a window, on a door, you have much more of a tzatvi mekel, you have the minchas chinuch. Rabbi Yashiv was asked, and this just shows your history, that halacha responds to history. During the Gulf War, you had to make a cheda atum, you had to close up the room. Now you don't want to be under house arrest when when the siren rang, you had to put on the tape. So again, of course, it's a question of pikuach nefesh, but then again, you try to minimize Shabbos. So Rabbi Yashiv suggested when you have to put tape on the doors or whatever, the windows, put tape onto the doors and windows, not onto other tape, and then you can take it off when need be. That would be less of an issue. Now, there's always a question that every Rav gets. I closed up my cabinets before Pesach, and I need something from the cabinets. I think people always need things from those closed cabinets. So Baruch Hashem, the Rabbanim sell the chametz with a clause that if he needs it, he allowed to go there and take what he needs. So that's not the problem. The problem is unsticking or taking off the tape that you close onto the door. So that was definitely a kayama. I don't think anybody made it to open it within 24 hours. That would be very batlanish. But at least we have the minchas chinuch heta. If you just put a piece of tape on the door that peels clean, so you have a Meleches heta, and you also have the minchas chinuch heta. Tape on a wall is okay. Now, someone asked the question, but he wasn't thinking. So that means I could attach a sign on Shabbos. I'm attaching it to the wall. Good question. But one side goes onto the paper. Don't forget, you can't attach to the wall without the paper. So that's definitely a problem. So therefore we don't attach signs. And taking off a sign is also something that should not be done. I saw a fascinating discussion of the following shayla. You have to be in Eretz Yisrael to appreciate this. But something in Eretz Yisrael that keeps people busy is called pashkevilla. If you don't know what that is, it's worse than it sounds, but at least as bad as it sounds. Pashkevilla sounds very, very, scary. Pashkevilla is all those nasty hate signs that they put up. One puts up, the other one puts up. HaRav said that's where you see Achdus in Shalayim. Because the first party puts up Pashkevilla. The second one puts on top of the first one. So everybody gets together. The first one, the second one, they're all tight. But anyhow, this is a true story. A Fruma Pashkevilla distributor came Erev Shabbos, right before this man, and taped up the signs with a lot of tape. And basically he was saying, I'm putting it up to keep it here for 25 years, but for sure 24 hours. And he put up tape, and basically, you're not allowed to take it down. If you take it down, I'm going to throw stones at you because you're Mechal Shabbos. So the question is, can you take it down? These horrible signs don't belong in the shul. He put it on for a permanent basis. So we have, for certain we have the minchas chinuch. If you can take off the sign without tearing the sign off the wall. But I saw a discussion about this, a beautiful, beautiful einfal. The Maral Diskin in the Chuvas, in Siman Hey, Sif Cotton Lamed Hey, has the following shayla. let's say I, for some reason, tie your talis with a keshel kayama. Now, if you have a memory as good as I do, when I was young, this was the most favorite nasty thing to do. You tied up someone's talis to the chair. I don't know what happened to that minute. It got lost. We're becoming very firm in our old age. Anyhow, but that was the favorite. Pass me, tied up someone's talis to a chair. A very nasty thing to do. So I did the talis for kayama, but it's not my talis. What is the status of my knotting someone else's talis? Is that kayama or ain't a kayama? That's they asked the Mariel Diskin. So he says, he's very, very brief chuvas. Ayin Simon Shin Tes regarding bosses. What does he mean? Bosses has a very big chumrah to it. If I make a bosses, it's muktzah entire Shabbos. If I put a stereo onto a stereo table, so the table's muktzah the whole Shabbos, even though it's a regular table. The question is, if I put a muktzah onto someone else's table, does it become a bus? I put my cell phone into your stender, Erev Shabbos. Find a break the mechut, I put my phone in your stender. So you're not the bailim. To activate a bus, you have to be the bailim. So he says the same thing should be regarding the sign. I mean, not exactly regarding the sign, but he said the same thing regarding all questions of kayama. It's totally in the bailim, not in the person that is doing it. Wait. So let me finish this. So if I come to your shul and I put up these nasty signs and I do it for kayama, but I have no right to make kayama in your shul. It's not my shul. Yeah.
Kayama is a mitzias. The kesher is a mitzias.
I'm going to tear it down as soon as I see it.
Bus is the knas.
Why is it knas? I have the knas. You have to be a bailim to make something part of my wall. If it's my wall and I'm going to take it down in a half hour, why is that kayama? You have the right to put it up. Your das is not making.
You cook for me for Shabbos, I can eat it because
no, because there's no heta of bishul sheina kayama. But if we assume there's a heta of tfir sheina shel kayama, and I'm taking it down, no questions about it, so your das doesn't override my das. Now he says it's true, bishul is no heta of sheina kayama, but according to the Ramah, there's a heta by tfir sheina shel kayama. That's what I understood he means to say. Now, so basically what he's saying is he's using the side of kesher to the heter of all cases where it's totally in Eina Shel Kayam. And I'm not saying it's Melacha of Bishul also, but that's basically what I saw Lagabi this Shaila. Someone asked, I guess, from a Shaila, that he put soda, I think it was a question putting a can of soda, or not a can, a bottle of soda into ice, but inevitably that loosens the stickiness of the label onto the soda. So again, that's probably not a psik reisha, and it won't happen for sure. That's not such an issue. But I'll tell you what is an issue regarding drinks, where you see that you have to learn halacha carefully. Rav Moshe was asked in that famous tshuva about opening a milk carton. Now today that you have it in yeshivas, but today you don't see this anymore. But the old, milk containers, you opened it and you turned it azoi and you made a spout. I still remember drinking the milk and there was plenty of wax in it, if you remember it. I remember it very, very distinctly. But Lamaisa, you opened and you made a spout on a milk container. So Moshe says that's making a Pesach, and that's awesome. Whether it's orange juice or milk. Moshe was pretty maker when it came to Tofer. So first of all, he's talking about a Siyas Pesach, which is worse. But more so, when you open that spout of a milk container or juice container, it's not peeling clean. The glue, the stickiness kept it closed. You're tearing open the connection to make a spout. So Moshe says that's a glue that has a din of a tefira. When they glued those spout together, that was there to stay. You have to tear it open. That is taka problem. The same applies to a matzah box. Any type of glued connection that was made to keep the thing closed, l'chayra, should be a problem. Now we have to deal with a very common question, opening a simple bag of potato chips or the like. So pashtus, hopefully these bags are made better than they used to be made and you could peel it clean. the truth is they use a minimal amount of glue. You should know. I could be, if I'm not mistaken, they don't use glue at all. That's right, heat, no?
Heat is okay, right? Heat.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. That's why Rav Moshe's heter applies. It's not tearing apart, it's heat. But more so, there's a big chiddush, which Lamaisa Lavush says, so I have to mention it. The Lavush says the following: if I connect something for a short time, you're allowed to open it, just like Kesha. Let's say I'm the manufacturer. I close it to get it to you. When you get it, you open it. When does a clock start ticking if it's kayama? When I glued it, or when you got it to use it? So we would say, what's the difference? When I close it, that's when kayama starts to tick. He says, no, since it's being just as a medium to get it to you, so my connection doesn't really count. It's if you get it to keep it, that's a problem. Now that is something of a chiddush, but that's what he says. So basically, it's all Rav Moshe writes in the Tshuva, it's kedai to open all packages before Shabbos. Sugar and matzah and potato chips. But opening these heated sealed potato chips that opens clean, we have Rav Moshe's heter. Now, we don't have the Minchas Chinuch's heter, because this is a soft material. So again, it's better to open before Shabbos. Rav Shlomo Zalman has a very unusual cooler regarding potato chips bags. And he says basically that the issa of Tofer is when you connect the two things to be together. You want the two to be together. You tape two papers together, or you put a piece of scotch tape on the sefer to connect the torn parts of it. But if you did something just to close it temporarily, you don't want it to be together. Forget it, you can't eat potato chips if it's closed. You want it to be transported and then opened. So it's not really a connection.
By definition, it's a temporary connection. You definitely
right.
To be open.
He says more. He says it's like the case where it's like a Magen Avram's case that it connected by accident. I don't want it to be connected. It happens to be that you can't ship it if it's open. Now it's a very dakas dekakula, but that's what he says. What connected just to transport doesn't have a din of a connection. That's what he says. Even
if it's glue or no?
Pastas. Yeah.
Even the milk thing.
Also for fresh.
No, because oh, I have to think about that.
Sometimes I will also say because
Tears.
potato chip bag is a very cheap material. That's why he allows it.
Well, how would that?
That's why he allows opening it, because it's not.
Oh, that's not a. That's if I was making a keli. I have to think about that. That's why I was making a keli. It's not a keli because it's disposable. But I think the main point is that today's potato chips have a much less of a connection. It was done only as a temporary basis, but again, best would be to open everything before Shabbos. What I mentioned to you is I want to mention now to all of you, there's an interesting point that sometimes you get a bencher that some wine stuck on it, and now the pages are connected. Can I open those pages on Shabbos, and no lettering are going to be torn, but the pages are definitely stuck together, and I am separating the pages. So this the Paiskim stellt zu a Magen Avram. Nidvaku hadafin hadadi ayidei shaiva. Those days they used candles. Little wax fell on, and then the pages are stuck together. You're allowed to open it. Why? Because it was never connected to stay connected in the first place. When you connect something, that's Tofer. Opening it is kareya. If there was no intention to connect it, it happened by itself, by the falling of wax, it's not a connection. If it's not a connection, it's not kareya by opening it. So the Paiskim say, this applies to a bencher, and that's what Shlomo Zalman relied upon when the potato chips bag that's stuck together. You don't want it to be stuck together. You want just to be able to transport it in a reasonable way. But definitely, when you have a page stuck together, there's definitely a heter to open it. Now, Lamaisa, a very interesting question today. Leben, chrein, I think dips. Most foods that come in plastic containers have a plastic safety seal on top of it, and that is, I think now it's glued on. The question is a mutter to peel it off on Shabbos? It's sealed, it's heated, no glue. I thought also it's glued.
containers, it's all different kinds. Right?
We'll talk about those that are glued, okay? So here the Paiskim say that's not soft, that would be the Minchas Chinuch Heta would apply. Because the plastic container is pliable. And it was there glued on. So you want to say if Shlomo Zalman's Heta, they did it just to transport it, that's fine. But if you'd ask me, it's much better to break through it. Oh, so that Rav Moshe's Heta applies. You're right. Rav Moshe's Heta applies, it peels clean, but the Minchas Chinuch Heta does not apply. And basically, it is a glue. So it's definitely better to make a hole in it. Kareya or al pi hachavis, to make a hole in it is much better.
Like on the dips, like the plastic thing on the dip.
Yeah.
Why is that Megufas Chavis you're allowed to do it?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's more than Megufas Chavis. It's or al pi hachavis. The plastic crane, a 2-pound plastic container, no? Crane, right? You know what I mean? So that's a keli. You put an obstruction. Taking off the obstruction is not a problem, but it's definitely better to break through it than actually to peel it. Now, Lamaisa, this is a little bit about the food items. Now let's talk about some other interesting shilas. Person gets a pair of socks, and there are different ways of doing it, but sometimes they have a glued seal on the top of it that connects the socks. Right? A sticker. No. So that's a problem. That you don't have the Minchas Chinuch's Heta. If it peels clean, you have a Moshe's Heta. But sometimes you see some of the strands remain on the stickiness.
So to keep it together for shipping.
Oh, so that you have the lavush, right? But you don't have the Heta, the soft. You don't have a Moshe's Heta either. Now, the very big shot, I want to be able to have time to talk about this properly, is today they have something called Post-it flags. Flags are something you put in a sefer, if any other names, but I'm talking about those sticky items that you put on paper or a sefer or on the wall or whatever it is. The question is, can you use that on Shabbos? So this is a perfect example of our sugya tonight. Rav Moshe's Heta definitely applies. It peels clean. You take it off, you put it back. The Heta of the Minchas Chinuch doesn't apply. You're putting a post-it or flag onto a sefer. Rav Shlomo Zalman's Heta doesn't apply because you buy a post-it to stick it on. It's not like you close the bag just to open it here. This is its final destination to use it. So the only and that's why some say not to use these post-its on Shabbos. Now, Rabelski told me he holds it's mutter, but for a different reason. Let me explain. I want to give you a little of a history. Not that I mean, someone told me he knows this personally, so I trust him. How did these post-its come out of nowhere? So he told me the 3M company were trying to make a glue. They made a mixture that backfired, and one of the people working there said, "Hey, this is an interesting thing. It's sticky, but it's not invasive. It's not like disturbing." And from then, they perfected it. It was an aborted attempt to make glue. So the chachma is to use the glue backing that does not have any permanence, or it does not have any real connection. So the question is, using glue, koilin shel soifrim, that's the problem. Because bara, you have to tear it apart. Rav Moshe's Heta about peeling clean is accentuated with these post-its. Because there, you see, it peels clean by nature, by definition. Otherwise, it wouldn't do it. So it's more than Rav Moshe's Heta peeling clean. It was made to take on, put on, and take off. In fact, some even compare this, like we spoke last week, the lettering on the side of the page. It's made to open and close. This is made to stick on and stick off. Unlike a potato chip bag that you open it and then you can't close it, this is so much not Tofer. The fact that it peels clean, the fact that it was made for that. So the Shmir Shabbos I saw in the new print is also Mekel, but he does say one interesting point. To take it off the pad for the very first time, that's a form of tikkun, because a pad of post-its are unusable, and you're making one usable, making it two usable. So that's his limitation to the Heta. Take it off before Shabbos, but again, I did see Machmirim, but I saw Rav Moshe was Mekel, and the Shmir Shabbos is Mekel, the Avnei Yoshvi is Mekel. So basically, to use it, now if you know, now this I want to mention, Some people, they use these flags, again, these red things, and when they start a Gemara, they don't want to keep on turning the page to get to the Marsha, so they put a red flag by the Marsha, another flag by the Maram Shif, whatever it is. To put it there permanently is a problem. Because there you might be misusing the post-it, but you're using it to be there permanent. That's a problem. So basically, this point we can mention the use of post-its if it's done on a temporary basis, avad is mut. Someone once asked me, he has a chumrah, he doesn't use post-its on Shabbos. But his master came to a shul on Shabbos, he opened up the safe if he needed, and there was a post-it on the area that he had to read. So that we could say, the other person has no bailam to make the shul's Gemara off limits, whatever it was. And that was put shaloi b'kavana. So maybe for that we have a heter. Now, Lamaisa, very briefly, the question about diapers is a big question because there you have glue onto a diaper. Now again, you open the tab and you put the diaper glue onto the other side of the diaper. But today they make it more efficiently, it peels clean. This is our Moshe's heter. We don't have the Minchas Chinuch's heter, but this is our Moshe's heter. And basically, there are some people that have a different concern. How do you take off the tab and use it for the diaper? The tab was on for more than 24 hours. So you're unsticking the tab that was on the diaper for maybe months and months.
And it was made to open.
Oh, so that we have the lavush. It was made to open up, so those that are not machmeh have this heter. Rabelsky once told me that very often you get diapers, you have to open it to put on the child, and you see it stuck together. Can you open the diaper? I'm talking about the edges of the diaper, and you hear it tearing. Is that a problem of makir pat that you're actually completing the diaper? You see, it's stuck on. You have to. So it's more than accidental. The Metzias is all these diapers are cut. It's the heat. They have an excessive heat that somehow has a little bit of the heat, makes a little melting of the plastic, and therefore it sticks. But it's nothing more than just that. Now, I'll just finish a few points. The question about what?
Garbage bag is the same thing.
Yeah, if it's stuck afterwards, it's not a problem. The use of Band-Aid is mutter because you put it on your finger. We said this once before. Don't wrap the Band-Aid on the Band-Aid, one edge on the other, because then if you have to tear it apart and it tears, you don't even have a Moshe's heter. And you don't have any heter because this is Band-Aid on Band-Aid. Someone told me he once needed a gauze pad. So he said, I have a great idea. He had a pre-cut gauze pad, but he didn't have any tape. So he took 2 Band-Aids and put it onto his wound, attaching it to the gauze pad, because he knows he's allowed to use a Band-Aid on Shabbos. But he wasn't thinking. He was using the Band-Aid as tape onto the gauze pad, and that was the problem. And last but not least is a delightful shayla to think about, but it's not more than just a shayla, because it's not really much of a shayla, and that is Velcro. Now, when Velcro was first made popular, there was a lot of discussion about it, because the truth is, when you use Velcro, when you open it, you hear a lot of tearing and you hear a lot of action, and it doesn't peel clean. But again, the science of it is, it's basically different. I don't know what. It's like hooks. That's it. That's not nothing more than. That's right. It's hooks and loops that interlock. You're not tearing anything. It's not glued. It's a very chachmadik connection. And I guess we'll say safe mas machshavat chila. There's no issa connecting on Shabbos. You could use buttons and connect. If there's no tofer, there's no issa. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful night.